الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا ما بعد. All praise is due to Allah, and we ask Allah to exalt the mention and grant peace to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to his companions, his wives, and all those who follow them on the righteous path until the end of time. As to what follows, listen attentively to the speech of Allah, wherein He says, I say first, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Allah says, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم إن زلزلة الساعة شيء عظيم يوم ترونها تذهل كل مرضعة عما أرضعت وتضع كل ذات حمل حملها وترى الناس سكارى وما هم بسكارى ولكن عذاب الله شديد. O mankind, protect yourselves from the punishment of your Lord. Verily, the earthquake of the hour is something tremendous. On the day where you will see every nursing woman throw away her child, she will be too busy to pay attention to the fact that she is nursing a child, and she will throw away the child. Now you know today, if a woman was nursing her child and she heard some earthquake or some noise, what is the first thing she would do? She will embrace the child, and she's willing to sacrifice her life so that that child doesn't even get scratched. However, on that day which Allah is speaking about, it will be the opposite. The woman who will be nursing will throw away the child. She will not be protecting him or protecting her. وَتَضَعُ كُلُّ ذَاتِ حَمْلٍ حَمْلَهَا, and every pregnant woman will have a miscarriage. She will drop the baby on the spot. وَتَرَى النَّاسَ سُكَارَى, and then you will look at people, you will see the people drunk. You know how drunk people behave? Have you ever seen drunk people? They don't know what they're doing. They can't walk straight, they can't talk normally, they can't function, they can't understand, you can't communicate with them. Anything will make them panic. They laugh for no reason, they cry for no reason. Excuse me, someone who's drunk is someone who's just gone. Their mind is shut down completely. And you will see the people appearing to be drunk, but Allah said, وَمَا هُمْ بِسُكَارَى, however they are not drunk. They will not be intoxicated. But what is the reason for all of that? وَلَكِنَّ, however, the pain, the punishment of Allah is severe. The torment of Allah is severe. This is one of the ayat which describe the condition on the day of resurrection. That day of resurrection which is awaiting all of us. That day of resurrection which is the greatest day in the lives of human beings, because everything on that day will be exposed. What is hidden and concealed today, it will become evident and clear on that day. It's a great day. It's a great day. يَوْمٌ عَظِيمٌ يَوْمَ يَقُومُ النَّاسُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. It's a great day on which the people will resurrect, will go out of their graves for the Lord of everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That day which we don't seem to be preparing very well for, I don't know why, all of us, including myself, we don't really seem to be taking this day seriously enough. Even though that day is very close. إِنَّهُمْ يَرَوْنَهُ بَعِيدًا وَنَرَاهُ قَرِيبًا. The people perceive it as something long, far. Allah said, and we perceive it as something near. It is very near. يَقُولُ لَبِثْنَا أَوْ يَوْمًا أَوْ بَعْضَ يَوْمٍ. On that day the people will say, we remain on this earth a day or part of a day. عَشِيَّةً أَوْ ضُحَاهَا. It's like we remain on this earth for one evening or that day of that one evening. So on that day, the whole life which we are living now, it will be equivalent to half a day. Half a day. And that day is very near. Near in what sense? in the sense that the last prophet to be sent was the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu salam, and he said, I was sent forth along with the hour like this. And he put these two fingers together. Meaning that the distance between him alayhi salatu salam and the last day is very short. And it is near in a sense that when one of us dies, khalas, he's almost there. Or she's almost there. Because there's no more life to live. You'll be in that barzakh, that interval, that life in between. And that one will be, according to the scholars, you will feel the duration when you're there, but when you're resurrected, that will be included in the half a day with the dunya. So even if you remain there for hundreds of years, it doesn't matter. Once you die, then your resurrection has already been established. So this is a day which Allah Azza wa Jal spoke about in the Quran over and over again. And so that the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, he warned the people from that day. And he advised them to prepare for that day. Now, it comes in the narrations that day is equivalent to 50,000 years. Yawmul Qiyamah, the day of resurrection is equal to 50,000 years. Is that a long time or a short time? 50,000 years. If I said 5 hours, you will say that's a long time. 5 hours? I just wanna finish. If we said 5 days, you will say, yes, subhanallah, 5 days? 5 months, we would say that's a long time. 5 years, 50 years, then 5,000 years, 50,000 years. One day. And not only that, the amount of suffering on that day will be tremendous as well. In the narration from the Prophet ﷺ, it says that the people will begin to drown in their own sweat. The people, according to their evil, they will be immersed in their own perspiration, their own sweat. Some to the ankles, some to the knees, some to the waist, some to the chest, and some their sweat will be all the way to their nose. They're barely able to breathe. In one's own sweat. 50,000 years standing in your own sweat. When the situation becomes so difficult and they're unable to handle it, and Allah will give them endurance. The sun will be the distance of a meal. The sun will come near to the heads and the people, the distance of a meal. What is a meal? The scholars say a meal is one of two things. Either the mile, which you know right now, the mile, which is not very, the sun right now is very, very far. If it were to be a little closer, we would all be toasted. So if it were to be only 1 mile away, that's pretty close. The other interpretation is meal. You know the women who use mascara for their eyes? The size of that stick which hangs from the handle that you put in the mascara, this is a meal. Yani the sun will be only this much above the heads of people. They'll be drowning in their own perspiration. Now, they will come together and say, let us find someone who can save us, or who can intercede with Allah just to begin the judgment. They don't want paradise. At that stage, they only want the judgment to begin, because this time there's no judgment yet. Allah has not yet come to judge between the people. This is only the waiting period before the judgment begins. So they will come together and go to Adam, our father Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. And they will say, oh Adam, You are the first creation of Allah. Allah created you with His own hands. Allah made the angels prostrate before you. Intercede for us with Allah so He can begin the judgment. And Adam will say, Nafsi, Nafsi, myself, myself. Meaning, I'm only concerned about myself now. Then he will mention the fact that he ate from the forbidden tree, after Allah prohibited him from doing that. And so he will say, go to Nuh. So that he will send them to Nuh, they will go to Nuh. And they will say, oh Nuh, you are the first messenger Allah sent to people. So intercede for us with Allah to begin the judgment. And Nuh will say, myself, myself. And he will mention how he asked Allah about his son after he had drowned in the flood. And then he asked Allah that which he had no right to ask. So he will say, go to Ibrahim. They will go to Ibrahim and they say, you are Khalilur Rahman, you are the close friend of Allah. And the fire wasn't able to burn you. Intercede for us with Allah to begin the judgment. And Ibrahim will again say, myself, myself, and he will refuse and mention the things which he had done in terms of telling them, this is Hada Rabbi, as speaking about the planets, that this is my Lord, when it wasn't the fact. And this was his way of giving da'wah. Anyways, he will feel guilty about that statement, even though it was okay to do it. And he will send him to Musa. And Musa will apologize in the same manner and will mention the soul which he wound up killing unjustly. Well, he didn't mean to kill him, he just punched him, but he was so strong that he actually wound up killing the man, and he will send him to Jesus. And Jesus will say the same thing as everybody else. Myself, myself. However, the scholars add, Jesus will not mention any sin. You see what Muslims, we don't hide things. The only one who will not speak about any sin which he had done, that he feels guilty about, will be Jesus. But he will say, I'm not for it. Go to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they will come to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They will say, you are the final messenger of Allah, and Allah has overlooked your previous and your future, shortcomings. So intercede for us with Allah, and He will be the only one who will say, Ana laha, I am for it. You see, the one who will intercede on behalf of all of humanity at the end of time would be the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No other prophet will take on that task. And he will say, I am for it. Alayhi salatu wasalam. Then he will go and he will praise Allah in a way that no one has ever praised Him. And then he will prostrate and make sujood, and he will glorify Allah abundantly until it will be said to him, Ya Muhammad, O Muhammad, raise your head. Ask, you will be given. Ask, you will be given. And intercede, and your intercession will be accepted. And so that he will intercede for his ummah to enter paradise, and the narration is quite lengthy. The point being, during these 50,000 years of waiting, some people will have a special privilege. Some kinds of people will not have to go through this headache at all. And those are the ones that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, which is authentic. He said, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم سبعة يظلهم الله في ظله يوم لا ظل إلا ظله. There will be 7 kinds of people under the shade of the throne of Allah. The hadith doesn't mention throne, the other hadith explains. They will be under the shade of the throne of Allah on the day where there's no shade but His shade. So while the people are sweating and drowning in their perspiration, there are 7 kinds of people that will be relaxing under the shade of the throne of Allah. And in the other narrations it mentions that the duration of the 50,000 years for them will only be equal to the time between Dhuhr and Asr. While the other people are suffering for 50,000 years, these ones will be under the shade of Allah, and the whole process will take for them, the way they will perceive it, is between Dhuhr and Asr, a couple of hours. Who are they? And are we of them? It is very important that we acquire at least one of these qualities. At least one. So we can enjoy this privilege on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Now, alhamdulillah, they're easy. You will see, as I mentioned them, you will find that you're at least able to do at least 2 out of 7. Inshallah. But maybe we haven't been doing it, maybe we have. Let's see. The first one is Imamun Adilun. A just ruler. A ruler who's in charge of the people, however he is just. The scholars say, even though the hadith is speaking about rulership in terms of government and wilaya and khilafah, the truth is this applies to any one of us. Any one of us who is in charge anywhere falls under this category. If you're a mudir, or you're the head nurse of other nurses, or you are the manager or co-manager or sub-manager, whatever you are, vice president, president, in fact, even you at home, if you have any authority over other people and you treat them with justice, then you are qualified. Then you are qualified. This is why a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he wanted him to acknowledge a gift which he had given to one of his children. So the Prophet ﷺ said, do you have other children? He said, yes. He said, have you given each one of them a gift equal to that one? He said, no. He said, then find someone else to acknowledge this, because I do not acknowledge injustice. That means even the parent, when he wants to get some gifts for the children, there has to be justice. We're not saying in terms of need. One may need a school supplies that the other one doesn't need. We're not saying if you go buy one a pencil that they need, you have to get the other one's pencils. No. Because this has to do with need. We're talking about a free gift. You don't go bring for one child an ice cream and you leave the other two with no ice cream. It's just not allowed in Islam. Go away. It's not allowed. Plus, you can imagine how the children will feel. And so Islam even is looking after the feelings of these children, so that you don't give some and deprive others. So being a just ruler, meaning any position of authority which has been given to you, if you're able to deal with people with justice, then you are qualified. The sad fact is that many people misuse the very positions of authority and power that they are given. So they favor some over others, and they do things which are contrary to justice. And they wind up failing in qualifying themselves to be under the shade of Allah through this one category. The second quality is شَابٌ نَشَى فِي عِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. A young man or girl who were raised in obedience to Allah. Yani some of us went off track. You know, you may have been born a Muslim, or you may be a revert to Islam, and you wind up leading a very bad life. Then when you got older, Allah guided you to practice Islam. I say to all of us, we're disqualified. Okay, if you had this kind of thing, you're disqualified. This is strictly for the person who was practicing Islam from a young age until they grew old, never went off track. The good thing is, if you can't do it because it's too late for you or for me, then we can do it to who? Our children. So instead of the child being able to beat any PlayStation game, or Xbox, or Nintendo, let us make sure that they're able to understand the religion which they follow. Instead of our children being good only in worldly, academics, let us make sure that they have understanding of matters of creed and belief. it is very sad to find that most of our children don't know who the Sahaba are, and don't know much about Islam, don't know about the prophets, but they know about the soccer players, and the basketball players, and the cricket players, and the actors, and the singers. They know all the losers in the world, but they don't know any among the successful. They don't know the prophets of God and their followers, the righteous people. They don't know them. So then we are failing in a sense that we did not have this young experience of being raised in obedience to Allah, nor did we give it to our children. So let us at least give it to our children. We will share the reward with them. Thirdly, وَرَجُلٌ قَلْبُهُ مُعَلَّقٌ بِالْمَسَاجِدِ. This one is easy for the men. A man whose heart is attached to the masajid. What does that mean? Does that mean that he prays dhuhr and he takes his heart out and he attaches it in some lamp in the masjid, and then he goes back out and the people say, "Where's your heart?" I say, "I left it attached in the masjid." So he goes back and he gets it in the next salah? No. It means that this is a person who's always contemplating the salah in the jama'ah, in the masjid. Someone who doesn't really miss out on salatul jama'ah unless it is not possible to do it. Someone who's consistent, someone who loves being in the masjid. Some people love being in the masjid, some people hate being in the masjid. They love to be elsewhere. Some people enjoy sitting over there. Some people like to go early, and some people want to go 1 minute before the iqamah because he doesn't want to waste time. He just wants to hear the, قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ, then he wants to join the ranks. So, this one, my brothers, and the brothers in particular, this one is easy. Ya Jama'at al-Khair, any one of you should develop in himself this attachment to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all you have to do is have your heart attached to the masjid, look forward to Salatul Jama'ah, and you're automatically qualified to be under the shade of Allah Azza wa Jal on the day where there's no shade but His shade. It is very sad that in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where it is the easiest place in the world for you to do this, we still fail. If you lived in any other country, it would be quite difficult to pray in the masjid all the time, because the masjid may be far, or the masjid which is close to you, there may be a grave, or maybe some Sufi masjid, or people of bid'ah, or whatever reason that may prevent you from being there comfortably. The only place in the world where around every other corner, 5-minute walk, you can find a masjid is the kingdom. And the masjid doesn't have a grave, guaranteed. Yet, we don't do it. Some people wish for that. We have it accessible. But we're not really taking advantage of it the way we should be. The third quality, or the fourth afwan, وَرَجُلَانِ تَحَبَّا فِي اللَّهِ اجْتَمَعَا عَلَيْهِ وَتَفَرَّقَا عَلَيْهِ. And two men or two women, not men and women, two men or two women who loved each other for the sake of Allah. So they meet upon that and they depart upon that. Now what is the love for the sake of Allah? Who can define it? What does it mean to love someone for the sake of Allah? Yes? You sleepy? Maybe you should bring some coffee next time. What is loving someone for the sake of Allah? What does it mean? That every time they give you 100 riyals, you love them? Is that for the sake of Allah? Someone that you get dunya from? Love for the sake of Allah is love which has no dunya related. There may be some dunya, and you may benefit from each other in terms of the worldly life, but that is not the reason for the love. It is not the core reason, meaning if that dunya was to be removed, you still love that person, because he's a believer. So when you love someone merely for the fact that you share the belief system, irrespective of whether there's mutual worldly benefit amongst you or not, this is the love for the sake of Allah. Meaning, I love you because we both want to love Allah, because we both want to pray, because we both want to go to paradise, and so on and so forth. Even if some worldly benefit may be included, but it is not the reason for the love. Because businessmen who do not love each other for the sake of Allah, as soon as one of them has a mistake which kind of affects the business, then his partner will leave him. Say, don't talk to me anymore. Each one of us will go in his own way. You see what I'm saying? Because it wasn't for the sake of Allah, it was for the dunya. But those who love for the sake of Allah, even if some worldly related issue conflicts between them, it does not make them violate the deen of Allah. He may have some issues, but he will still love him because he's his brother in faith, or she is his sister in faith. So loving each other for the sake of Allah, isn't that easy? It's easy, ya Jama'at al-Khair. Any one of you find any sister, the brother find a brother, and the sister find a sister that you just love for the sake of Allah, and make sure that the reason why you like her is because of Allah, and you're qualified. You're qualified. And don't doubt that. Because the Prophet ﷺ promised us. He said, these 7 will be under the shade of Allah. And he only said that 2 people, they love each other for the sake of Allah, they meet upon that and they depart upon that. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, he will taste the sweetness of faith. The one who has 3 things. Whoever has 3 qualities will taste the sweetness of faith. Faith has a sweetness. It tastes yummy. It's nice. The first quality is that Allah and His Messenger are more beloved to one of us than anything else in this world. Yani, you are willing to give precedence to the command of Allah and the command of His Messenger ﷺ over the command of anyone else in the world. Meaning, if something is in the Quran and the Sunnah, and then all the people want you to do something opposite to the Quran and the Sunnah, you say, I will ignore you and I will follow the Quran and the Sunnah. They are more beloved to you than anyone else. If you have that quality, you will taste the sweetness of faith. The second quality is that a person who loves another person for the sake of Allah, he does not love him except for the sake of Allah. And يُحِبَّ الْمَرْءَ لَا يُحِبُّهُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ. Only for the sake of Allah you love this person. And the third one, to hate. To hate. To go back to disbelief. After Allah saved you from it, the same way you hate to be thrown into the fire. Does anyone like to be thrown in the fire? Everyone hates to be thrown in the fire. When you have this feeling that you are so happy Allah made you a Muslim, that you hate to leave Islam and go back to disbelief, the same way you hate to be thrown in the fire, when you have this feeling, then you will be able to taste the sweetness of faith. It means you will adhere strictly to that religion which you have chosen. So these are, so far, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 kinds of people. Not 4 people, 4 kinds of people. Under each kind there may be thousands and thousands and millions of people. Anyone who qualifies. We have dealt with 4 thus far. How many do we have left? 3. Because we said there are 7. But those other ones will be discussed when? After we apply the third one. After we apply the third one, a man whose heart is attached. Yeah, so for the brothers, let's go right over there inshallah, do the salah. And after Maghrib we will continue with the other 3 and the question and answer session. Wa jazakumullah khair. Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad. We continue with the 5th quality, or the 5th kind of person that will be getting that privilege on the day of resurrection. The hadith says, وَرَجُلٌ دَعَتْهُ امْرَأَةٌ ذَاتُ حُسْنٍ وَجَمَالٍ فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. That's probably the toughest one. A man who was invited to do that which is unlawful by a woman, ذَاتُ حُسْنٍ وَجَمَالٍ. In other narrations they mention mansib, a woman of beauty attraction, attractive, and position. She's got fulus. Yet, now usually who's going after who? Usually, who's going after who? Men are going after women. The men acting like, yeah, no, we don't know. You know the truth. Men chase after women. You will hardly find women chasing after men. It happens, but that's not the normal. The normal situation is the woman is up there and the man is trying to climb. And very often he doesn't make it. Now, of course, issues of boyfriend, girlfriend, relationships outside marriage, all this is no way. Not part of Islam, won't be entertained, end of story. We're talking about even in marriage. A man may want to marry a particular woman that is of beauty, of fulus, position, status. She has a decent lineage. But usually men will fight over her. And only one will get her. Can she marry more than one? No. So the default situation is men are trying to get women, not women trying to get men. This man here has it reversed. The woman of beauty and position, she's trying to invite him to that which is unlawful. Having a relationship with her, not he inviting her. Yet, even though he is the one who is being demanded, she is the one who is in need of him, which is a man's dream in general situations. He says to her, I fear Allah. Meaning, I fear the punishment Allah has prepared for those who fall into illegal sexual intercourse. I feel the punishment associated with approaching a woman which is not my wife. So because of that fear which he has in his heart, he rejects this offer which most will gladly accept, unless they believe. If a man doesn't believe in resurrection, recompense, if he doesn't believe that having relations with women is unlawful, he will be ready. In fact, sadly, even if he had a wife, he would cheat on her. He would cheat on her if another woman offers herself. That's men. Unless that man fears Allah. Unless that man has a religious commitment which restrains him from following his desires. Because we have to understand a very important principle. Allah created us with a natural inclination towards each other. And the temptation of men towards women is greater than the temptation of women towards men, even though both exist. Men are tempted by women and women are tempted by men. But the temptation of the men by women is greater. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, I have not left behind me a temptation which is more harmful upon a man than women. The greatest temptation for a man in general, there are exceptions to the rule. And we're not blaming women for it either. Some say this is not fair, you men are crazy, this and that. I say no, we're not blaming, this is the way it is. They are the greatest form of temptation for men. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna dunya hulwatun khadira. This worldly life is sweet and green. Yani it feels good when you enjoy it and you enjoy looking at things. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ مُسْتَخْلِفُكُمْ فِيهَا فَيَنْظُرُ كَيْفَ تَعْمَلُونَ. And Allah has placed you as deputies on earth to see how you behave. Then He said, فَاتَّقُوا الدُّنْيَا. Then protect yourself from the temptation of the worldly life. وَاتَّقُوا النِّسَاء. And protect yourself from the temptation of women. Verily, the first thing which led to the destruction of Bani Israel, of the Israelites, was the temptation of women. This is how they went off the straight path. Many men today, Muslim men, don't understand this. And they think it is okay to be having a friendship kind of relationship with the women. And that they can be friends and they can chat and talk to each other and send text messages and you know, with outside the boundaries of Islam, as in he's a scholar, he's a da'i. Women may speak with a man like the women of the Sahaba spoke to the Prophet ﷺ, or the men afterwards, seeking religious advice, seeking guidance. No issues there. We're not talking about need. There's a reason to speak for need. If you work, you may have to speak to this nurse, whether male or female, in order to get the job done, because you happen to be in this kind of environment. We're not talking about that. That is necessity. That is necessity. We're talking about flirtatious kind of speech. The one that is not necessary, not related to work. And there's no there's no marriage between these two people. Many men don't realize the dangers associated with that. And they don't realize how quickly people can develop feelings to one another. Very quickly, people fall in love. And once you fall in love, you can hardly fall out of it. And then, it will eventually lead to what this man was able to avoid. But would you be able to avoid it? If you had been Mr. Charming, and the lady liked you, and then she came and offered herself, are you going to be man enough like this man to say, I fear Allah, go away? The truth is, not that many are strong enough in faith to do that. And once they fall into that trap, then try to get out of it. It becomes a kind of a cycle. You go back to it, and then you stop, then you go back to it, then you stop. They have a relation, then they say, no, haram, we have to stop. Then after 1 month, they fall back to it, then they stop. And until death comes while they're still committing, zina. This is facts. I'm not speaking from some other, we're speaking about facts. Things that we know happen to people that we know, emails which we get. These things happen all the time. Oh, we were just friends. We were just friends. I never had any feelings for him. Then one day she realizes that she's madly in love with him. When he broke his arm. Or something. Crazy stuff. Happens all the time. So we need to know where our limitations are, brothers and sisters. Because this man will be under the shade of Allah because he was in this predicament. He was in this predicament. Like who? Like Yusuf. The same thing happened to Yusuf, Joseph. His master, she was his owner. He was a slave. He was an owned slave by this female owner, who was the wife of Al-Aziz, the governor. Yani, and he lives in her home. And she closed the doors. And she said, Hayta lak, come here. قال معاذ الله. قال معاذ الله. He said, I seek refuge with Allah. And he ran away from her and she chased after him. And she continued to seduce him and to invite him. Then her friends, instead of coming and telling her to be ashamed of herself, they started offering themselves to him also. And offering him to go with her. Until he said, As-sijnu ahabbu ilay. He said, Oh Allah, prison is more beloved to me than that which they are inviting me to. And he was in prison for so many years because he preferred that over falling into that which is not pleasing to Allah. Which one of us is Yusuf? None. So let us not reach that stage. What I'm saying is, don't think you will be, we hope that one of us will be that strong if ever in this predicament. May Allah save us from this predicament. But don't count on it. So from now, men and women have to close the doors. Sister, maintain your modesty. Maintain your modesty, your shyness, which is part and parcel of the faith which you are part of. And when you think of all the righteous women in the world, including the mother of Jesus, Mary, you think of a woman who is modest. When Jibreel appeared before her in the form of a man, قالت إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك إن كنت تقيا. A man appeared before Mary, before he even said anything. The first reaction, and he was a handsome man. Basharan sawiya. He appeared to her in the form of a handsome man in perfect condition. His appearance was his perfect condition. And she had already been in a place away from her family. She didn't say, hey, how are you? What's your name? And try to strike a relationship. The first thing Mary did was, I seek refuge with Allah from you if you fear Allah. She got scared. And she wasn't about flirting with this man. That's Mary. How many women follow Mary and Aisha and Khadija and Hafsa and Fatima and so on and so forth? Today, women have dropped all these barriers of modesty and shyness, and they now willingly and freely chat with men like everybody is their brother. But sister, not everybody is your brother. He's your brother in faith? Yeah, we're all brothers in faith. But that doesn't entitle this kind of free, mixing and free talking with another strange man. There must be some barriers unless required by necessity to speak. Because of work, because of this, because of that. But this general, comfortability which has become prevalent today is actually un-Islamic. And it is what leads to destruction. You see, it's very easy. It's very easy. A wife has a husband. And the husband is going through some tough time. So whenever he speaks to her in a violent way. He's being mean. He's being tough. Tayyib? So she's already having some conflict, domestic conflict at home with her own husband. She goes to work, and her co-worker is Mr. Nice Guy. Hey sister, how are you? How's everything? Can I do this for you? What is going to happen to her? The shaitan will use this very fact against her. Look at your lousy husband. Look at this lovely man. So her husband will start falling out of her eye. Now when she goes home, she doesn't like him anymore, because every time he mistreats her, she remembers Mr. Nice Guy at work. So now it is impossible for them to get along ever again. And this may lead to divorce, and the children do blah blah blah, and you all know the calamities happen. Why? Because some wise guy at work was being super nice, and trying to flirt with the sister when he shouldn't have. And it happened that the husband, who's been nice for many years, was going through some tough time. You see how the things escalate? They begin with something minor, then the shaitan will use these little things to make big things happen. So the sister will become always dissatisfied with her husband and always satisfied with her co-worker. So then she may love him and develop feelings for him, and Allah knows what may result because of that. And what happens behind closed doors is what you can't even imagine. If you read the news, in the local news, you will hear calamities. In the hospitals, a woman comes with her husband, supposedly to have an appointment with the doctor, then they catch her with a man in his car. She brings her husband with her to the hospital. He's waiting in the waiting room thinking his wife is with the doctor and his wife is with her lover in his car. They were caught by the hay'a. And you, the man, will think, what? My wife, what? I bring you to the hospital? When did you reach this stage? Another woman, she met this guy at the hospital. She's not sick anymore, but now she goes to the hospital all the time for a checkup. For a special checkup by that nurse. Not for the doctor to check her up. Her husband thinks she's just going for the usual routine examination. How it happens? Split of a second. A split of a second. A smile, a flirtatious speech, khalas, it's done. Some people are too weak, they can't handle it. That's why Islam came with these very strict regulations when it comes to these issues. Why? To protect you and your family and your sister and your mother and your daughter and the whole society. So that either you are married and so live life the way you like it, do whatever makes you happy, or you're not, know your limitations. Anything in between will create a problem for you, trust me. And you know what I'm talking about. So these things which have not been observed, we need to observe them. We're not telling you to be rude. It doesn't mean that the sister is upset and rude or the brother, no. But we have to know how to address each other when we're dealing with the other gender. You don't speak to your brother like you speak to the lady. Don't get too comfortable, because you will create a problem for yourself and for her. And the same thing for the sister. Maintain your modesty, maintain your shyness, and avoid being in situations which are not praiseworthy. Okay, because obviously avoiding this temptation will put you in paradise under the shade of Allah. Sixthly, a man who gave, or a woman who gave charity in such a secretive manner that his left hand or her left hand did not know what the right hand spent. And this is a metaphor. This is a metaphor. Meaning the level of secrecy in the charity was so much that the left hand did not know what the right hand spent. Yani the right hand spent it so secretly that his own other left hand or her own other left hand did not realize it. Which is basically speaking about sincerity. When you do something for the sake of Allah. Because some people don't do it for the sake of Allah. Some people will be sitting in their car, whether you're the lady sitting in the back, or you are the brother driving, or you are the passenger, and one of these bums, one of these poor people, the beggars, will come and knock on your window. And some people want to show off. They say, let me give her 5 riyals. So that the people in the car will say, MashaAllah, MashaAllah, look at this generous brother. Or for the sister. Some of them make sure that there are many cars around. They want to make sure there are 1, 2, 3, at least 4 cars that can see before they give the sadaqah. These people don't have any ajr, no reward from Allah. Because they have associated with Allah someone in that act of worship. The one who wants the pleasure of Allah, he wishes that no one knows but Allah. He wishes to give the sadaqah, yani if he can open the door, drop it on the floor and close it, so that no one sees him, this is better for him than the people seeing him give the sadaqah. Which teaches us sincerity. 1 riyal you spend with sincerity is better than 1,000,000 which you do to show off. It is not about showing off. It's about this doing it for the sake of Allah. This person, because once he gave sadaqah. By the way, hadith mentions, تَصَدَّقَ بِصَدَقَةٍ, a single charity. It doesn't mention that this is something he does often. It is actually in the past. It's in the past tense, meaning once in his life, or you sister, once in your life, you actually wanted to give something only for the sake of Allah, you're qualified to be under the shade of Allah. See how easy it is? If you haven't done it, do it soon. And the best charity is the one you give to the poor people. The one you give to to your own family members. The best charity is your own family members who are poor. And do it so that you do not have to remind them of your favor over them. Do it in a secretive way. Find someone who is really in need and give it to them so that no one knows but you, that person, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once in your life, you're qualified. Per the hadith. Per the hadith. Once in your life, you're qualified. Maybe some of you have done it, maybe some of you have not, but this is a chance. But make sure the niyyah, the intention is for the sake of Allah. Don't try to get anyone's admiration, anyone's praise in the process. Once you want that along with the sake of Allah is gone. They don't register together in one account. The last but not least, وَرَجُلٌ ذَكَرَ اللَّهَ خَالِيًا فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ. And a man or a woman who remembered Allah in seclusion, so their eyes shed tears. And this is again speaking about love for the sake of Allah and fear of Allah. Anytime in your life, if you were sitting by yourself, or some of the ulama say, even if you were among other people, but you were doing it for the sake of Allah, if you once cried, because you remembered the day of judgment, you remembered the hellfire, you remembered paradise, you remembered the favors of Allah upon you, He guided you to Islam, He made you a Muslim, He gave you a job, He gave you a family, anything which made you cry for the sake of Allah, then you are qualified under these 7. A man or a woman who remembered Allah in seclusion, so they cried because of that. It is not the weeping which one does in Ramadan, where they scream. You hear people screaming in Ramadan, you will think someone died. This is not from the Sunnah. This kind of exaggeration and crying, you hear him, and you can't even hear the Imam anymore. And you say, what happened here, man? What happened, brother? This is not the way to cry. The way you cry is you shed tears, and because of the strength of your crying, your body may move. As for screaming and raising your voice, does not indicate this hadith. Some people think the louder you cry and the louder you scream, the more Allah will forgive you. La wallah, it doesn't work this way. This is not the standard in Islam. It's about doing it secretly. You don't want the people to see it. It may happen, you can't help it. Sometimes when you cry, you can't hide it from people. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah will not hold you and will not burden you beyond your ability and scope. But your niyyah should be for the sake of Allah. So in conclusion, 7 qualities. Whoever has one of them, the Yawmul Qiyamah for him or her will not be 50,000 years. It will be between Dhuhr and Asr. And they will not be under the sun, which is only 1 mile away. They will be under the shade of the throne of Allah. And this applies to anyone who has them. Believe it or not, some people will come to this life, lead a whole lifespan, and leave without ever acquiring even one of these 7. And some people may have all 7, and some may have 6, and some may have 5. Let us try to have as many of them as possible to increase our chances of guaranteeing that position on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And it's not too difficult for Allah. وَمَا ذَلِكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ بِعَزِيزٍ. This is not something that is beyond Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah is generous. And when He sees that we sincerely want these, we really want them from Allah to qualify, Allah will facilitate them for us. But we have to develop this kind of thinking. This kind of thinking only comes when you think about Yawm al-Qiyamah. You think about the life to come. You think about paradise. You think about hell. You think about the resurrection. When we're heedless, when we don't think about the death and we don't think about the last day, then we will not be thinking about these qualities either. We just don't care. Prayer is whatever, and sadaqah is whatever, and everything is whatever. We talk to women freely. Everything goes. Because we're not really prepared. We're not really prepared. So we have to change our mentality and prepare for the life to come, which I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to facilitate for all of us. And now we can take your questions, inshallah. There's a microphone there. Barakallah feek. If the ladies have a piece of paper, you can send it. If you want to speak, you can. Your voice is not a awra. Yeah. No, well, actually crying for the sake of Allah is something that is expected and praiseworthy. The problem is that our hearts have become so hard that we don't cry. So we are abnormal. Those who don't cry are abnormal. They have a problem. We have a problem. Because the general condition is crying for the sake of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said to the Sahaba, لو تعلمون ما أعلم لضحكتم قليلا ولبكيتم كثيرا. أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said to his companions, if you knew what I know, you would laugh a little and you would cry a lot. He's saying to the Sahaba, if you knew what I know, you would cry a lot and you would only laugh sometimes. Today, we laugh all the time and we almost don't cry. So that is a deficiency in that person who doesn't cry. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when the Prophet ﷺ told him to lead the people in salah, he said, Muru Abu Bakr falyusalli bin nas. Command Abu Bakr to pray, to lead the people in salah. Aisha and other of the female companions said, O Messenger of Allah, Abu Bakr is a man with a soft heart. When he reads the Quran, he cries so much that the people can't hear him. So let someone else lead the salah. He said, no, command Abu Bakr to lead the people in salah. So Abu Bakr was known for crying a lot when reciting the Quran. Umar also. Ibn Abbas used to have two lines or permanent marks on his face because of crying. Another one of the Sahaba, the skin under his eyes was almost dead. It's almost moist because of how often he cried. The issue of crying for the sake of Allah is as part and parcel of our deen. The problem is that we are just so off track that we have nothing to cry about. Because the hardness of the heart. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْقَاسِيَةِ قُلُوبُهُم مِّن ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Allah says, so woe to those whose hearts are too hard against the remembrance of Allah. So sister, whoever cries in salah, in Quran, this is a good sign. Alhamdulillah, this is a sign of faith. The one who criticizes has a problem. If they can't cry, that means they have the problem. They shouldn't be criticizing someone who's on the right track. Okay? So it is totally normal to cry. It is abnormal not to cry. And it is a sign that the heart is hard. The heart is hard and that the iman is weak. Ultimately. Naam. Other questions? The men are on vacation today, huh? I ask questions, no one answers. Now I'm telling you, ask questions, no one asks. What's up? I was too hard on the issue of the women. Ma'alish. It's for our own good. It's for our own good. You have to be harsh sometimes. Being lenient all the time, everybody will just, go swimming afterwards. You have to be a little tough so we can realize the dangers we're dealing with. Don't be shy. If you have questions, sensitive questions, relevant, irrelevant, on the topic, off the topic, about Islam, about other religions, don't ask me about medicine, but anything else, go ahead. While the time is there, because soon,
Since no one would like to raise a question, we have much time. We would like to take this opportunity. Sheikh, can you shed light also on the... because we read many books on the weaknesses of faith and how we are wanting to. I think it's the strengthening of faith and more. Aside from the Islamic point of view, what are your suggestions based on your experience also?
Well, I have a lecture for that. And I would prefer if we can dedicate a whole lecture for that very topic. Don't you think that's better?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'll be more comprehensive. Because anything I say now will be incomplete. And there are many important elements to discuss in the issue of the weakness of faith and the strength of faith. And so I think it would be wiser, inshallah, in fact the upcoming lecture, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal, we will dedicate it to this very topic. And so then I will, and maybe, I don't know if I still will do, we may even have a PowerPoint presentation. So you can see some of the evidence. There's no promises, but it may be this way. Now, anything besides that, sister? Or brothers? If not, we can call it a day. I know you're tired and everything. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. You cannot pray inside the car unless it is a voluntary prayer. If you want to pray a voluntary prayer, you may pray sitting down. Because you can't stand in the car unless you have, I don't know what kind of car. But most cars you can't stand. So sitting down is not allowed unless you have a reason. And so the fact that there's time and that you can make it home before the end of time for prayer means you're not allowed to pray the faridah, the obligatory prayer in the car. Because it is a condition, qiyam. Qiyam, you must stand for salah. Okay? Same goes for airplanes. You don't pray sitting down unless you're unable to stand and the time of salah is going to go out. And you cannot combine these prayers also. then and only then, because of necessity, you may be allowed to sit down because you are unable to stand. Otherwise, you cannot sit down and pray. The faridah, you cannot. You have to face the qibla, you have to stand up, and you have to do all the actions of the prayer. So you wait till you get home, and then you pray the regular salah at home. Naam.
Even if it is not on a daily time, for example, 2-4, and you will reach house at Asr time.
Yeah, but the whole time between Dhuhr and Asr you're in a car? Yes? Traveling. No, traveling you can combine prayers. So you either pray Dhuhr and Asr in the beginning of time of Dhuhr, or you can pray Dhuhr and Asr at the time of Asr when you reach your destination. If you're traveling on the road for many hours, you have room, you have flexibility. But you still cannot pray in the car. Yani let's say you leave 10 minutes before the adhan of Dhuhr. You're unable to wait till Dhuhr and pray and leave. You have to leave 10 minutes before Dhuhr, you're already on the road. And you will get to your destination half an hour before Maghrib. When you get to your destination, you will combine Dhuhr and Asr. 2 rak'at each, because you're traveling together. 2 for Dhuhr, 2 for Asr, khalas, end of story. Okay? That's how you do it.
Sheikh, many of us actually, can you shed light more on the combining and the qasr and because some people, they thought that the qasr and the shortening and combining is too similar. So when are you going to shorten and you're going to combine the prayers?
Well, shortening the prayer is recommended, very highly recommended sunnah when traveling. Shortening. However, combining the prayer may be done when traveling or when even at home, as a resident. Because combining the prayer has to do with necessity and hardship. For instance, a doctor will be having a surgery which is expected to take 5 hours. That doctor is allowed to combine the 2 prayers, Dhuhr and Asr or Maghrib and Isha, because he will be busy in this operation which he cannot leave for 10-15 minutes to do salah. Even though he's not traveling, Islam allows him to combine because of that necessity. However, someone traveling, but the travel is easy. They will leave at a particular time, get in an airplane and make it to Yambu in 40 minutes. If you go on from Jeddah to Yambu, it's a 40-minute flight. Tayyib. Here, some of the ulama say, if you're going to leave at Dhuhr time, you don't do Dhuhr and Asr. You pray Dhuhr here, and then you pray Asr when you get there, because there's no hardship for you to combine. But if you are driving from Jeddah to Yambu, that's a 5-hour drive or 4-hour drive, and when you get there you will be so exhausted, then you pray Dhuhr and Asr combine at the time of Dhuhr, because when you get there you will be so tired. So combining the prayer is conditional to hardship and necessity, whereas shortening the prayer has to do with when traveling only. Whether there's hardship or not, you are expected to shorten your salah when traveling. Combining them depends. Is there hardship? Combine. If there's no hardship, don't combine. That's why, if you live here in Jeddah, and it rains, for the men, and it rains, and it becomes difficult for you to go to the masjid because you will get muddy, then the imam is expected to combine Dhuhr and Asr or Maghrib and Isha in the masjid, because of rain. If there's fear, if you fear that there's someone that may attack you, or there's lack of security, you may combine prayers in the masjid in order to avoid going twice outside. So these are examples of combining without any travel associated, because of necessity and hardship. So is that clear? Good. But I hope the sisters are traveling with a mahram. That's what I hope for. Because the sister's talking about going a few hours in a car. And sister, you cannot be traveling without a mahram. And taking another 4 or 5 ladies with you do not make a maharim to you. You're not going to marry any of them. And so, that's not a mahram. So traveling freely is to be avoided strictly by the sisters. When there's an urgent situation, then a mufti will give you a fatwa for that particular travel. But to be going back and forth, and sisters going on a journey, and they want to go to this place and that place, no. And here in Mecca, a lady came from Abha or some Riyadh to Mecca to do Umrah. She wanted to stay a few days around the Haram and do Umrah. A lady, a practicing woman. When she came to Jeddah, she contacted one of her friends, and she said, I want someone to find me a furnished apartment to stay in it. Her friend said, I will have my brother help you out. So her brother of that lady went up with his friend. They went to pick up that lady to drop her off at the furnished apartment. And of course they dropped her off and raped her. And then they left. She came for Umrah. What is the result? No man to look after her. No man to protect her. She was raped by the people whom she would last expect them to rape her. She came for ibadah. So because of these facts, Islam came to protect the woman from these kinds of situations. A woman is not a wrestler. She's not a boxer by nature. She's not a karate with a black belt. So that every man that comes, she will knock him out. A woman is weaker than man in her physical structure. No one denies that. And men are crazy. And no one denies that either. If they don't have fear of Allah, they're wild. They're wild. Some of them are wilder than wild animals. So this is why a sister does not... You may go to a place and the car breaks down. And then the ladies have to go out of the car. And some crazy shabab, drunk, high, they will come and kidnap the ladies and take them to the woods and do whatever, kill them and leave them. This happens all the time. But when you have your husband with you, your brother with you, you better believe he's going to protect you. And these other men will have to deal with him before they get to you. So traveling without a mahram is not a joke. And something that you should leave alone completely, sister. Now.
Shaykh, what is your personal point of view? For example, Dawah Center, I think you're familiar with Islamic Education Foundation, for instance, going to the Medina with the teachers and the students, about 20 of them, 30 of them.
Nope.
Personal point of view.
Nope, not personal. Islamically, not allowed. Allah does not even expect you to do Hajj. Even Hajj. You don't do Hajj if you don't have a mahram. And Allah will not hold you accountable for not doing it. You say, but it's Hajj, I have money, I have. No mahram, sister. Allah does not expect Hajj from you yet. And if you meet Allah without this Hajj, Allah will not hold you accountable for missing out on this pillar of Islam. This is Hajj. So going to Medina, going to any, or even Umrah, or anything of the sort, having a bunch of people with you does not make them maharim. Islam clearly, explicitly explain who the mahram is. It is not a bunch of women. So even if a da'wah center, even if the hospital organizes an event to go into Medina, and you don't have a mahram, you cannot go. And your travel is sinful. And if you want, and it's amazing how someone wants to get the pleasure of Allah and they want to start off by disobeying Him. If you want the ajr of Allah, Allah is more happy with you remaining at home and not involving yourself in this journey than you going out and being a fitna. Because at the end of the day, you're a fitna. You go out, you go to the masjid, you don't have a man next to you, then you become a target. You become a target for many people. So Islam wants to protect you from this kind of predicament. So even if the da'wah center organizes it. Now some of the ulama say, just to be fair, because Jeddah is not considered travel distance to Mecca, they say that's fine if you live in Jeddah. Because they say from Jeddah to Mecca is a 45-minute drive, and it is not travel, and you need a mahram for the travel, not for the Umrah or Hajj. If you lived in Mecca, you can do Hajj without a mahram. The mahram is not needed for the pilgrimage, it is needed for the travel to the pilgrimage. So if you live in Jeddah, some of the ulama say that's fine. If you follow the opinion that Mecca and Jeddah are not travel. But many of the ulama consider Jeddah to Mecca travel. And then they say that you still cannot go without a mahram. But I'm letting you know at least regarding Jeddah, going to Medina now, this is travel. You're not going to Mecca. This is travel 100%. It's haram for you to go. Not my personal opinion. This is the opinion of Islam. It's haram for you to go. And that opinion which says some of the scholars allow that if you have a bunch of women with you, so you become a group, this is actually going against the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and such ijtihad we simply do not entertain. You stick to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah will give you something better in return. It's a test, ya jama'ah. It is a test from Allah. Allah is testing you, sister. You're dealing with Allah at the end of the day. Don't think that Allah will, if you sincerely wanted to go do Hajj, or wanted to go to Medina, you sincerely wanted to, and the only reason why you did not go is because you're following Allah's command in regards to mahram, wallahi, Allah will give you the reward of all of that travel, and the reward of staying at home. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man taraka shay'an lillah, awadahu Allahu khayran minhu." Or kama qala alayhi salam, whosoever abandons something for the sake of Allah, Allah shall give him better than that. If you don't travel because you want Allah's ajr, Allah will give you the ajr of what you could have gotten in your travel, and the ajr of obeying Him and remaining at home because you don't have a mahram. Don't think you're going to lose. But you go against Him, and you think you're going to get ajr from Him. When you started off by going against His command, you're on the wrong track. You're on the wrong track. So you have to know who you're dealing with. Hey. Yes, sir.
Can you please enlighten for us about this is something about the tradition? Reading the Quran in behalf of the deed, or giving the Quran in charity in behalf of the deed?
As for giving charity on behalf of the dead, we have evidences from the Prophet ﷺ that if you give charity on behalf of your deceased relatives, that they will get the ajr for that. Because we have an evidence. As for recitation of the Quran, we don't have any evidence that you reading the Quran will benefit anyone that passed away before. So the sadaqah will benefit them, reading the Quran will not.
I mean, but what about giving the Quran in charity? For example, give the Quran charity.
Yeah, that falls under charity now. Yeah, that's fine. Every time that person reads from the Quran because you gave it to them, you will get the ajr, and the one who you did it on their behalf will get the ajr. But now what people do now, when the person dies, they bring a big qari, they have a nice, gathering, or this one reads this juzu, and everybody does the khatma of the Quran, or that you recite every day one surah for you, one surah for your parents. All this is not from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. No. But they're very prevalent in our Muslim countries.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
I have a question. This is actually a question of my friend from Philippines. She studied law, and right now they are on studying an evidence from a body, a dead body. She asked if is it allowed in Islam to scrutinize a dead body in front of these people to find evidences or not.
No, it is not allowed. Does that entail touching?
Just scrutinizing if there is some evidence to find as a study for this crime.
But I'm not really familiar with the process. What does she have to do so? What kind of scrutinization?
To practice how to find evidence for the body.
Yes, does she have to touch the body?
Something like that.
Yeah, khalas.
But in front of the group of class.
That's worse.
Because it's a part of their subject.
I understand. But as long as she can avoid that, she has to avoid that. I mean, the whole scenario she's in is already problematic. Studying law, which means if she's going to become a lawyer.
Same as the doctor, like when they study about.
Yeah, but see, the doctor, there's actually a real necessity for that. The issue of law, it's things which can be avoided, and they should be avoided. Plus, they can have a fake, statue thingy, whatever they call that, a mannequin. They can have just a form, and they put on some clothes and they show how to do it. Why does it have to be a real person? You see what I'm saying? So as long as she can avoid it, she should avoid it. I cannot tell you that she can go ahead and do that, because it is abnormal for a woman to be feeling up a man in front of a bunch of crowd. It's just not normal. And the fact that there are people there makes it worse. Because they will be looking where she's putting her hand and where she, like I said, I don't know the process. What does she have to touch? What does she have to check in order to find out? But that's from what we've seen in the movies. They go from top to bottom. And they put their hands in all kinds of places that a woman shouldn't put her hand in. That's all I know. And so, maybe she needs another profession. Yeah, it's a tough one. Alaikum salam.
Can you just shed some more light on the statement you made about a woman's voice is not part of her aura? Because I thought it was. Could you just elaborate a bit more?
Sure. The woman as a whole is a aura with the exception of her voice. The evidence for that is that the wives of the Prophet ﷺ used to actually communicate with other men. And the Quran and the Sunnah are full of women speaking to men and men speaking to women. What Allah did not allow is being soft-spoken while speaking. فَلَا يَخْضَعْنَ وَلَا يَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَض. Allah said. So let them not be soft-spoken in their speech, so that the one in whose heart there's deviation will find temptation. So Allah in the ayah allowed the woman to speak, but told them how to speak. So the ayah itself is an evidence that woman's voice is not awra, because Allah did not say don't speak. He said do not speak in this particular tempting, flirtatious way. So then Allah endorsed the speech of women to men, and the ayah was speaking about the wives of the Prophet ﷺ when other men come and ask about him. Which is an evidence that her voice is not awra. What is a problem is if a sister either makes her voice sound soft, deliberately, or she speaks in a flirtatious manner. And I'm not going to imitate it for you, you know what I'm saying. Okay, because I will look silly. I will sound silly as well. So what is not allowed is the manner of speaking and the actual voice. If it sounds too attractive, she tries to sound too soft, which will cause a man, because men like even good sounds. Men and women love good sounds, good images, good food. You like good things. So this is what is not allowed. But her voice in general is not awra, per the ayah in the Quran and the many narrations from the Prophet ﷺ. Now,
what about the reading Quran contest, for example? It has been practiced in Philippines.
Is it in front of other men?
Yes.
No, this is not appropriate. This is not appropriate because why would that person actually be in that position? Because their voice is already beautiful. They're only in the competition because they sound nice. So this is not appropriate for men to observe, because some men may enjoy the speech of Allah and some may enjoy the sister and her voice. They say, MashaAllah, wow, and this and that. In his mind, khalas, he forgot about the Quran. Now he's worried about the lady with the Quran. So because of that possibility, and you don't know the crowd, who's what and who's not, you avoid all of that by keeping it among the ladies. Among the ladies. Now, because usually you're supposed to beautify your voice in the Quran. And that's why. Otherwise, regular speech may not have the same problem. It's almost Isha. You have a last question?
How about the autopsy? Is it allowed? It's the same. The autopsy is not allowed. It's like they know what the crime happened.
Yeah, but do you mean the idea of cutting a dead person up, or the woman being involved in the autopsy of a man? Which one do you mean?
The autopsy itself.
No, this one is not supposed to be the case. You don't do it unless there's a need for it. You don't do it unless there's a need. Even if the need is not really, it's not a pressing need, it's just out of curiosity, no, you don't do that. Because you don't want to inflict any kind of harm upon even a dead person. But if there's a crime, and you need to find out the cause of death and things of the sort, then the ulama say, because of that necessity, it is allowed. But it is not to be done for a no reason or even a not important reason. It has to be a valid reason that a judge requires of it. You know, we need to know how this person died, in which case it is allowed. Now,
Sheikh, how about in wedding celebration? In the women's, are we allowed to dance? But women only.
Because Sheikh must hear, I think, because of, I know that this matter. Sometimes you're invited, for example, by Saudi colleagues, and you know the situation here is, I think this is their tradition to dance like this. So
yes, it is. Well, I'm not Saudi, but yes, I know that the Arabs in general are dancing kind of people. Not only Arabs, actually, many different people. But the idea is, it depends. Dancing for women in and of itself is not forbidden. Okay? The problem is in what is associated with dancing. The manner in which these women dance is simply inappropriate. The way they move their bodies, the way they want to look attractive, tempting, sexy. And so, in fact, the shaitan will beautify a woman in the eyes of another woman. Don't think this is crazy, or this is not factual. This is factual. You've seen how many lesbians there are in the world, and how many gay people there are in the world. The shaitan actually does not leave any opportunity to mislead you, except that he will take advantage of it. And it is possible that he will make a woman find attraction towards another woman, even though she's not really that kind of lady. She's okay, she wants a husband, but in that particular situation, the shaitan may get the best of her. So I say that the manner in which these women dance amongst each other today, the kind of clothes they wear, makes it something which negates the modesty of a woman. Back then, they wouldn't dance in this way. They still put on some clothes, they were covered, and they may have some, during a wedding you may beat on a deaf. It's a kind of drum which doesn't have any bells. That was fine. But today, they're going to go left and right, and you know what I'm saying? And they go like this and they go like that, and they have half their clothes. She's wearing a piece of cloth which has a stitch here, and a stitch in the back, and a stitch around her thigh. And everybody else is skin. Everything else is skin. And so this is not for a Muslim lady to do. Even in front of other ladies, this negates modesty. I'm not saying it's haram. I'm just saying it negates modesty. And it is inappropriate for a sister to behave in this fashion, be it in front of men, obviously, haram in front of men, or even in front of women. It's just too much. And the way the Arabs do it is really too much. They've overdone it. And so don't follow their footsteps in this regard. They're off track in the way they dance in the Arab world. I know that much. The belly dance, Egypt, Lebanon, famous for these things. They have competitions. And then they ask her after she dances in front of all these men, how was it? She says, Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, Allah yahdiki wallah. You're praising Allah too after all this? Alhamdulillah, I danced very good tonight. Anyways. Okay guys. Enough is enough. Inshallah, in the next lecture, if you have other questions, because it's almost Salah and we want to catch the prayer. And so, unless you have an urgent question that needs to be addressed now, and I don't think so, we've already done so much. And so next time, inshallah, we'll be dealing with the issue of Iman. Iman increasing and decreasing. What do we believe about that? How to fix it if we have a problem, inshallah. And everything associated with that. And we can continue the questions which are of importance to you. Jazakumullah khair wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.